Okay, we have a couple sets of LS heads. We're going to spot check them. They appear that they have some cracks between the intake and the exhaust seat. So I've blended them back and I've put dye penetrant on it, Magnaflux spot check. I've got them sitting on the hot tank right now. So we're waiting for the dye to soak in, and then we'll develop them and see how everything works out. Okay, so we got these heads on top of the hot tank because it's pretty warm up here. You know, you can put your hand on it, but it's probably about 80 degrees, maybe a little bit better. And I let them set on top of the hot tank overnight. I sprayed the penetrant on it, figuring that if they were warm, the crack may open up a little bit more. I noticed on these heads when I was cleaning them up, unfortunately, you got to get these heads fairly clean to see if they're cracked. These were horribly dirty. This head's definitely cracked. So we have 3 other ones. We just need to make up a pair. That's all we need. This one is looking promising. So is this one. This one I keep getting some interesting readings, kind of a fuzzy line. So I've cleaned it up. I've repenetrated, put the penetrant back on it. That's a tough word for me to say today. So I've sprayed it again. I'm going to check it again. If I end up with 2 good heads, I'm going to go with them. It's looking like so far, hopefully, I'll be able to salvage 2 heads out of here. We're not worried about the seats too much. There's just a thin amount of material between the head, between the 2 seats, and obviously, eventually, you know, these heads are going to probably crack, you know. It's just there's a very little bit of material between there, and it's aluminum. You've got 2 seats in there that are pressed, cooling, you know, expansion, contraction over the years. So this one's definitely cracked. Now, you know, you could probably pressure check it and it'd probably be all right, but I want to start out with 2 heads that I know fairly certain that they are not cracked in that area. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to let this set a little longer, and then we're going to spray it and develop it. This one's got a little weak line right here. So this, I may do that one over. But, yeah, I'm going to probably do that one over. So I'm going to do that spot right there and hit it, let it set, and then I'll develop them and we'll see where we're at. Yee. Well, I'm going to call that one cracked. Sorry about the fingers. So this head's cracked. It's not bad, but it's cracked. This one I've double checked it. There's a little line right there. I'm going to call this one cracked. This one looks decent. This one looks decent. So these are a pair. We're going to make them a pair and surface them valve job. Okay, so we're grinding the LS valves, and usually I replace the intake valves because usually the heads that I get, there's not a lot of margin left on them, and they're usually kind of pitted, and by the time you clean them all up and then realize that maybe the chrome's wore off the stem, I just replace them. The exhaust, usually I can grind them. There's usually a fair amount of margin on them. The intake's not so much. So that's what we're doing right now. I put a little bit of green marker on these. So I don't want to take anything more than I have to off the intake valves, although I do want to run them through my valve grinder because I've had brand new valves that weren't quite as good as they could be. Let's just put it that way. So we'll get her all set up, and the markers just for, I just got done dressing the wheel. The marker's just there for an aid, visual aid. So the green's all off. Got a nice finish. It exceeds the finish from the factory, so I'm good with that. Didn't take very much off, if anything. A couple thousandths. There's a little high spot on it. We have the valves all ground. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to stem them for setup height. So we'll get on to grinding the seats. Don't think I'm going to get it all on one video. Probably the next video I'll be grinding the seats, milling the heads, and setting up the springs. So thanks for watching. Okay, we're going to just do a little touch up on these heads. They're not beat up really bad, so I prefer to use stones. I can control them a little bit better. I've said that in the past, and so anyways, we're going to get going on it. So on the exhaust, because it's a little bit wider, it's not quite half the 45, although it is a good amount of trimming between the two. Probably about 75% of the 45 is still there. It's not beat up bad, so we're just going to touch it back up. You can see it right there, right there, right there. We're all pretty even, so we're just going to touch the 45 on them, make sure it cleans up good. If it doesn't, then we'll adjust it with the 35 and the 65. So we're going to touch it up with the 45. Start with this one here. Looks good. Put a little bit of a marker on it for a visual aid, and it also help you control your 45 width. But I've done enough of these that it's a pretty good. My eyes are pretty good for this. Not much for anything else, but. So it's cleaning up all the way around in the 45, so we're good. Remove the marker so we know we're good. So I'll continue on this. Okay, we're doing the last 45. I always make sure that I adjust the stone, make sure it's clean and it ain't loaded up. Depending on how much pressure, depending on what the seat's made out of, and depending on what makeup the stone is, it's going to determine that. So you always want to keep an eye on that. Okay, so we got the 45. It's all done on the exhaust side. We've got, take a look at them and see how the seat width is across the board here. And they look pretty good. So we're going to do the 45s on the intake side. Now I do use a little bit of very fine lapping compound. I believe it's like, it's 280 grit. And I've had this for 25 years and I still got a little bit left in the can. So I don't use it to aid in a poor valve job. I simply use it for a visual check, just look at all my seats and see how they set. Some guys don't use it, that's fine, do what you like. This is how I do them. On quick touch-ups like this is how I do them. And it lets me allow me to look through and look at the width of the 45 and visually check it, and it looks good. So we're going to do the same on the intake. On these particular heads, or at least that last one, because these two aren't a match, but they will be because I'll measure the deck and I'll check the valve drop and everything before I mill them. On the LS, the valve seat is way out to the edge, so we don't want to make the valve throat or anything bigger than it needs to be. We don't want to sink the valve a whole lot trying to achieve it to register on the face of the valve. So these will be seating right out to the edge of the valve, and that's okay. It's very common for race stuff to be that way, but you just got to be careful. You don't want to make anything any bigger than it needs to be. Milling these heads, I'm going to measure off of this head bolt boss here and this head bolt boss here. One 6/13. Going to measure that one again, double check it. It must have had some dirt on it. $1.14. So it's 1,000 end to end. The other one is a lot further off end to end, but and I don't believe either one of these has been cut. But it's, like I said, it's just for reference. This head is very close. But I've seen them off, so I'll show you how wavy the surface is from the factory. Anybody ever tells you that these things have got to be dead flat for the multi-layered gaskets, well, they are right, but if you think they're coming flat from the factory, I got news for you. Let's see if we can get you on the gauge here, and you can watch the gauge jump around. Okay, this is the first pass. You can see how just rough the surface is. We're hitting here, here, We're not picking nothing up here. We're pretty square to the head. We're going to call that 0. We got a little, we're picking up here. So you can see, you know, the finish on these things ain't super. And I believe that's a factory finish. So we're going to cut them. And, you know, anybody that thinks they're going to get away with not cutting a set of LS heads, it's your time, your money, and you'll probably be disappointed. I've never seen any of these heads that didn't need to be cut. So we'll get cutting on these. So we're going to just cut this one until it cleans up. And then I'll cut the other one. Probably we'll cut this one 2/1000 over after it cleans up, because I want to get them as close as I can. I don't know how bad the other head is. I think the other head's got a little bit more erosion on it, so that's what we're going to do. So when it's all said and done, I'll be probably taking like 7/1000 off this head. We have it marked on each side. I'll measure it after I get done cutting it, and then I can know exactly how much I'm taking off it, and I can monitor the other head and take off that amount on the other one accordingly. Heads are all washed. They're all cleaned up. As clean as they're ever going to be. These things are a bugger to get clean. We're going to put them together dry, which means I'm not going to lubricate the guides, and they haven't been. I'm probably going to final wash them one more time in some solvent. So we've got the position for the valves numbered. I've got the heads marked. And we're going to put the valves in. We're going to check the stem height. And then once the stem height needs to be adjusted, we will adjust it. And I imagine that these are used, so these are definitely, regardless, they're going to have to be stemmed. There they are, kind of womped out at on the stem top. So wow, that's pretty damn close. So we're reading all really close, within less than 4/1000. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly stem the exhaust and recheck them again. And then probably going to spray them with some carb cleaner and try to get some of that. That's actually rubber from the mat that was sitting on. I'm going to wash them one more time with some carb cleaner, and then we'll assemble them. So, we've checked the assembled height. I put a balance shim under these. They're all set to the height that's good on them. They're both even as far as the height goes, within 0.03 of an inch. So we have them all back together. I guess we're going to call it done on this video. I got to assemble the next head, but it's going to be the same as this one, and probably isn't that exciting. Thank you for watching.